Hi everyone, it's Rachael here and a very warm welcome to episode number 15 of the Walk the Talk podcast. So I have been getting a lot of questions recently about something that I really didn't know very much about, and that is about the menopause and how the menopause can affect your body weight. I've also been asked a few other questions regarding stress and how stress hormones can actually affect your attempts at losing weight. So instead of trying to answer these questions by myself, I thought what better way of doing it than inviting someone who knows a lot more about this onto the podcast. And that is when I came across a lovely lady called Rebecca Boulton from the Hormone Mentor. And she has kindly given me an amazing interview answering lots of your questions regarding the menopause and stress. And we also talk about the effects that your hormones have on your attempts at controlling your body weight. And it's a really interesting interview, even if you're not around about the menopause age. It's still an interesting listen. So I hope you really enjoy this interview. And as always, if you do enjoy the podcast, please leave a review on iTunes. It's much easier to do that now. If you're listening to the podcast on iTunes, all you need to do is go into the podcast app where you're listening, scroll down to the bottom and you'll see a little star rating, and if you could just pop a wee 5 stars in there and a nice review, that would be sweet as. So without further ado, here is the interview with Rebecca. Enjoy. So welcome Rebecca Boulton, the Hormone Mentor, to the Walk the Talk podcast. Thank you so much for agreeing to be my guest today.
Thank you for asking me.
I thought I would start by asking you a little bit about yourself. So you're a nutritional therapist. Your business is called the Hormone Mentor. So that tells me that you work with the mental thing that we call hormones.
I do, yes.
Could you tell me a little bit more about what you do?
Okay, so as a nutritional therapist, I work with a very holistic approach. So I look at how food and lifestyle changes affect the way that our hormones work, and how by making changes to them and improving them can help manage the symptoms of any sort of hormone-related issues that we've got. Now, the majority of the women that I work with tend to be perimenopausal or menopausal, but I also work with people that are struggling with things like PMS, with thyroid issues, adrenal stress as well, because a lot of those things tend to be linked. So that's it basically. You know, I've started my business about 5 years ago, helping out, thinking that I would be able to help everybody, and actually I've just niched down as that time's gone on, because the hormone side of it is my own background, having struggled with it for many years myself. So that's just really interesting. I found that lots of women were coming to me with those sort of issues, and that's what I enjoy doing. So that's why I work with that now.
Okay, so you mentioned that the reason you do what you do now is because you've had issues in the past. Would you mind sharing like your sort of your journey to
basically, I had my children in my early 30s. So I was just before I was 30 and 31, I had my 2 children. And after I had them, I just didn't feel like myself at all. I couldn't really explain it to people what I felt like, but it just felt really overwhelmed. My moods were all over the place, and I was constantly tired. And I know you're meant to be tired after you've had children, and that was totally normal, but I felt like my levels of tiredness were just kind of much worse than other people were describing. Like I just wasn't able to sort of wake up in the morning, and even when my kids slept, and I'd often go to bed at the same time as them and wait until they got up, I still felt tired every day. So I went to the doctors a few times, and they would just kind of dismiss me a little bit with a kind of, I was back to work at that point, working part-time in a corporate job, which was quite stressful, as well as trying to juggle 2 children. And I was also going through a divorce at that time. So I didn't really get any answers. They kind of told me that, it was normal to feel that way and things would get better as my kids slept more and they got older, and I had lots of tests done, but nothing sort of came back. And I was reading a magazine one day, and it was all about, as an article about how to balance your hormones naturally through food. And when you're reading something and you have a little bit of a light bulb moment,
Yep.
and you know what, this is describing me. This is describing exactly how I feel. And it talked about, how food can really help, and looking at your diet. And I started to make some changes, and over time started to feel better. And it just sparked an interest in me, because it had helped myself feel better. I then thought, actually, this is something I'm really interested in. And long story short is that I went back to college to do a postgraduate diploma in nutrition, in nutritional therapy, and that's how I ended up doing this.
That sounds cool.
Thank you.
Nutritional therapy is something I'm really interested in as well. I think we spoke about that before.
Yeah, we have. It's a really interesting job. No person is the same, so it's different every time. To see the difference that it can make to people when they really fit. Often I get people that are, have been passed from pillar to post and don't know what's going on with them in the same way that I felt, and seeing the difference that it can make to them, is really, really great. It's a really nice feeling to be able to help people in that way.
Yeah, because I think a lot of the time now, in my experience and my background is more of a sort of digestive disorder issues, is that a lot of people, not only with digestive disorders, but also hormonal issues, so things like PMS, PCOS, menopause, so symptoms are sort of dismissed by the sort of general practitioner or your GP, is sort of dismissed as this is what you've got, here's a diagnosis, there's not really very much we can do about it, so you just kind of need to learn how to live with it. And I think a lot of people like me 10 years ago just kind of accepted that because it's your doctor, you're supposed to trust your doctor, and sort of just accept that that's going to be your life now. There's nothing that can be done, you just have to sort of get on with it. And that's really not the case. Like, I've found over the last 10 years of sort of learning about this myself and working with a nutritional therapist myself, that it doesn't need to be like that. And I think that we need to start spreading the awareness of
absolutely I totally agree. And I do think that people are becoming more open to it now and realising that actually they're not getting what they necessarily need from their doctor. People don't necessarily want to go down the long-term medication route. A lot of the time with hormones, it's either take the pill and that will be the absolute cure of everything, or go on HRT if you're older and you're going through the menopause. And I think for me, what's important to me is to help people feel educated. It's not my job to tell them what to do. If that is the route that you want to go down, then that's perfectly fine. But I just want people to know that there are other options.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
I think that's a really important message to spread. And I think there's been a lot coming out recently in the more popular programmes. There was something on Lorraine about the menopause. There's been things on some of the other daytime programmes. And of course, the Doctor in the House is a very popular programme as well, which is showing people that taking a more holistic functional medicine approach is something that can happen. It's not that readily available to people.
It's not, and it's a lot of people don't even know that it exists yet. But it is nice. It is nice to see that there is a little bit more sort of press coverage on it now. But I think a lot of people are still sweeping it under the carpet as a, I don't know, some sort of witchery or something.
Yeah, I also think that sometimes people just want someone to tell them an answer, and functional medicine isn't quite that straightforward. It is a little bit more of trial and error and seeing what works, and testing things and seeing what works for you, because everybody's so individual. Sometimes people don't necessarily want to take that level of control, because they feel scared by it. But I think once they start to do it and see the changes that it can make in the symptoms, they come on board more. Yeah,
and I think a lot of the things that we're going to speak about today, one of them being menopause, and another being stress, sort of PMS, and how hormones affect things like weight and the symptoms that come with these issues. I think a lot of the time people are a little, maybe even a bit embarrassed to talk about these kind of things, and to ask, to say like, this is how I feel, this is what I'm suffering from, and I really need some help. And I think a lot of the time it's a case of, this is a bit embarrassing to talk about, it's a bit of a taboo subject, and people kind of suffer in silence with it and just kind of think, oh, this is it, this is how it must be, I just need to deal with it. And part of the reason that I started this podcast was to talk about things that are maybe other people don't speak about, things like, hormonal stuff like the menopause and the menstrual cycle and periods and all these sort of words that people don't like to use.
And I do think that's really important. I think it's really important to open the conversation up and make it a normal thing to talk about, because it affects 50% of the population. This is something that every woman is going through, whether it's medically induced or whether it is something that you go through naturally. It is something that you'll go through. Not everybody goes through it in the same way. Some people, people's experiences are so different. Some people sail through it and some people, really, really suffer. But just being open and to understand that it is something that happens and that it's normal is, I think, really, really useful for people.
Yeah, definitely. So let's get on to the subject of today's podcast, which is the menopause. And the reason why I reached out to contact you about this is because a lot of women, in fact, I would say the vast majority of the women that I work with in a nutritional point of view and also as a personal trainer tend to be at the age of, becoming menopausal or actually going through it. And I get a lot of questions and a lot of discussion about it in the groups that I have. And I almost feel like a little bit like I really want to help, but I haven't experienced it myself yet. Although these ladies make it sound wonderful, so I'm really looking forward to it. So I don't have personal experience, and I don't really know, one, what it actually is, what the physiological changes are that are going on, what we should sort of expect to experience, and the reasons why it's happening, because obviously it's a natural thing. We need to go through it. And what the symptoms are and how we can perhaps think about managing it in a more of a holistic way. So shall I start by asking you, what exactly is the menopause for anyone here that is listening that hasn't gone through it and has heard all about it and is looking forward to it?
I think there's a bit of a misconception around what the menopause is. It actually is the time when a woman stops having periods and is no longer able to conceive naturally. So they say that you've gone through the menopause when you've been without a period for over a year. So that would be when you sort of turn. The menopause is actually a very short time. The symptoms of it can go on for a long time. And that's sort of what I would call, and is becoming more commonly known as, the perimenopause. So what happens is your hormone levels start to decline. Now, the main hormones that decline are your sex hormones, which is your estrogen and your progesterone. Those are the ones that control your menstrual cycle. And what that does is, as they decline, that brings on symptoms. And like I said, not every woman will go through the menopause in the same way. We'll all have different experiences and severity of symptoms. But, there are so many different symptoms that can come up. Things like mood is a massive one, fatigue and energy levels, hot flushes and night sweats, issues with your sleep, things that your listeners have and people in your group have mentioned, things like itchy skin and, poor skin. All of those kind of things are all linked to the menopause, but actually isn't actually the menopause. So that's why people are called menopausal, but it actually can go on for... They say it can go on for anything between 2 and 10 years, which sounds horrendous.
Bloody hell.
But obviously that's why it's so important that we try and get on top of it and try and manage the symptoms naturally. And actually there's a lot you can do holistically to help manage it.
Okay, so you've touched on a few of the symptoms that you can expect to experience, but what would you say are the main symptoms that people experience when they're going through the menopause?
So the main symptoms that people tend to experience are hot flushes is the one that people talk about a lot. Night sweats as well. So waking up in the night, just feeling really, really hot. They're just unable to control their temperature. Mood swings can be anything from, really severe anxiety and depression to just feeling a bit low, to just not having any control over your mood. So there's swinging from one to the other. There's a bit of a joke, about women that are going through the perimenopause getting this sort of perimenopausal rage where you're just so angry for absolutely no reason whatsoever. You have no idea why you're angry, but you just feel angry at the world. And then afterwards you think, why was I so angry and why did I behave like that? It's just having no control over those kind of things. It also affects things like your skin, your sleep is often affected as well. Food cravings is another one. You feel less in control, and weight gain is a massive one. And one of the reasons that I get a lot of people coming to see me, and probably yourself as well, for that one, because they may be doing things exactly the same as they were before, but their body isn't reacting in the same way,
right?
And therefore they're gaining weight in places that they didn't before, and just the exercise and food routine that they had before is no longer working. Those tend to be the main ones that come from me. Oh, and brain fog as well. I get a lot of people that struggle to concentrate and remember things, and just generally feel like their brain isn't working as well.
You mentioned something there that I hear people struggling with all the time, and that is the weight gain side of things, because obviously I work in the weight loss industry. And people come to me saying exactly what you've just said there, like what I was doing before is no longer working. What is the reason for that?
It's because when your hormones decline, it makes it more difficult for your body to release weight. So estrogen, when you have excess estrogen or fluctuating levels of estrogen in your body doesn't let go of the weight in the same way. So you need to change the way that you're eating to manage your estrogen levels. Also tend to find that your stress hormones get blocked a little bit when you're going through the menopause. So, and when you're stressed, your body holds on to weight because it feels like it doesn't want to let go of it because it wants to keep you safe. Also, things like your sleep being affected can mean that, first of all, it disrupts your ghrelin and leptin, which are the hormones that control your appetite. So if they're not working as well, you might overeat or not be able to recognise when you're full. Willpower goes out the window when you're tired as well. And the exercises that you were doing before might not be working as well, in that they're putting more stress on your body, because you need to exercise differently as you get older, because some of the exercise that you might be doing before, like longer cardio stuff, is actually putting more strain on your body. And again, that's going to get your body to release cortisol to help keep your body safe. So that's sort of a physical change as well. So there's lots of different things, and food cravings as well. You just don't necessarily you might think you're doing the same things. And everybody's like, oh, I'm not doing anything differently. But then if I get them to write a food diary or just, track what they're eating, they'll realise that actually the things are sneaking in that they weren't thinking about before.
Yeah. So it's interesting to hear that, because I think from the conversations that I've had in the sort of recent past is that a lot of people, they do say things like, I can't understand why I'm gaining weight or not losing weight, and they almost think it's something that they're doing wrong, but there is an actual physiological reason there. So you're not going mad, you're not you're not failing at life because of this. There's an actual physiological reason there, and like a lot of women come to me, it's almost like they think they're going mad, like I'm doing everything right, like why is this not working? And ladies, there is an actual physical reason there.
Absolutely. And your cortisol levels, when you are really stressed and your body's releasing a lot of cortisol, which is really common in menopausal women, you find that your body stores fat more as well. It sort of triggers it to store fat. It means that it affects your metabolism. So there's lots of different reasons why it's changing, and it isn't necessarily that you can't lose weight at that stage of life. You just need to change things up and think about doing things a bit differently.
Yeah, definitely. Right, shall we get into some questions that I've had from some of my listeners?
Absolutely.
On the subject. So we'll go through them from the first one that I sent you and just see how far we can get, because I know there's probably multifaceted answers to each one. So we'll start with Susan's question. So Susan has written, and she says, my background is that I've had an underactive thyroid since having a hysterectomy at the age of 33. She still has her ovaries. I have been in menopause for 7 years. I battle with weight loss and anxiety. I have flashes hourly day and night. My skin looks like it's been scalded. So what is my question? How much longer will this go on? And is there anything you can suggest to help the flashes? And thanks. Yes, I must add joint pain, fingers, knees, toes, elbows, to the point where if the flashes don't wake me up, the pain does.
Right, okay. So basically she's had a medically induced menopause, or she's starting to go through a medically induced menopause. She's probably, sounds like she's about 40. So like I said before, it can go on for 2 years, it can go on for 10 years, but it sounds like Susan's probably going to be one of those people that suffers with it for a little bit longer. Sorry, Susan. Basically, it's about getting on top of those estrogen levels. So making sure that your estrogen levels are balanced. What can happen is everybody thinks that naturally your estrogen levels decline as you go through the menopause. But because we have a lot of artificial synthetic estrogens in our environment, it can mean that we have higher levels than we need because they're artificially raised. And by the artificial ones, I mean things like, maybe plastics that we might be using to store food. It can be cleaning products and beauty products. They produce something called they're called xenoestrogens. It can also be in food. Different hormones are found in some meats and dairy and things like that, which can increase estrogen levels. But what happens when they're artificially increased, our body doesn't necessarily know what to do with them in the same way as hormones that we produce naturally. So what's important when it comes to things like that is making sure that your liver health is supported, because that is your liver actually gets rid of excess estrogen in your body. It helps it to excrete. So if it's not working as well and it's feeling overloaded with things, then it won't release the estrogen. And what happens then is that this estrogen that you don't want is kind of circulating around your body. The way that so what I would do first of all is to think about cutting back on stimulants. Things like caffeine and alcohol are really important, because obviously we need our liver to help process those. And if your estrogen's kind of getting in the way, that might block you releasing any excess estrogen. And also when you are having lots of hot flushes, that's a trigger anyway. Sugar, caffeine, alcohol are all triggers. So I would definitely cut back on those, because it will help to reduce those as well and help you to release some of the excess estrogen. What I always get people to do is to try and keep a food diary of the triggers as well, to see if there's anything specific that is affecting them.
Yep.
And if there's any kind of pattern around what they're eating as to when the flushes come on. Because often there is. It isn't always a case of don't eat this and don't eat that. It's different for everybody. There is some foods which do tend to be triggers and that you tend to recognise, but it is quite personal for everybody. So I would keep a food diary. And by food diary, I mean write down what you're eating, write down what the environment is that you're eating. Are you rushing it down? Are you sat having dinner and chatting relaxed? Are you sat in front of the TV? How do you feel when you're eating? How do you feel afterwards? Those kind of things, going into quite a bit of detail so you can see if there's any kind of pattern, and cut back on, if you are going to use plastic storage, make sure that it's BPA free. So that the plastics, because what happens is it can leak into the food. And so you're actually taking it in. Go on to paraben-free, chemical-free cleaning products, beauty products as well, because it's going straight into your skin. And there's a lot of them available now. It's becoming much more available.
Oh, it really is, yeah.
Days, if you go into most health food stores, they'll have them in. But you can also go into, like Boots and Superdrug and places like that and get them now. And most of them will say they're paraben-free, because it's a really good marketing tool now as well, because people are becoming more aware of it. So just be very careful about the kind of things that you're using. I also like to support my liver every morning by having a lemon elixir drink, which is just a glass of water with a squeeze of half a lemon. add a little bit of apple cider vinegar if you've got some in. It'll help to boost your liver health, just give your digestion a good kick, as well as kickstart in the morning as well, so that you're starting things off well and getting your digestion and liver working as well as it can do for the rest of the day. That's just a really simple one that's easy to sort of put in there.
Yeah, definitely.
There's also herbs which are helpful for hot flushes, which is black cohosh is one that's often recommended, so it might be worth looking at taking something like that as a supplement to help reduce the hot flushes if they're really bad. It can take a little bit of time for herbs to sort of start working, so don't expect that to be an overnight thing, but it is something that over 2 or 3 months can really help.
Yeah.
And the joint pains are normally because when your estrogen levels drop, it affects your circulation. And also, it can be that your minerals are low because your body isn't absorbing the minerals as well. So something like a magnesium salt bath, Epsom salt bath could be helpful.
Yep. That's interesting. So lots of little things that can all sort of contribute to helping the overall situation there.
Yeah, I mean, it isn't just one thing, go away and do that. It is a case of, making some food, some lifestyle changes. And you don't have to do it all at once, just try one thing at a time. I always say to my clients, don't overwhelm yourself, because if you try and do everything at once, it becomes really overwhelming and then you end up not doing anything at all.
Yeah.
So just build on it and do it over a period of time.
Definitely. I can't agree. I couldn't agree with you more there. Like, that's one of the biggest things that I see a lot of people doing is trying to change everything all at the same time, and then 2 or 3 days later they're sitting there going, oh my God, I can't do this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's because you feel really motivated to start off with, don't you? Like, yes, I'm going to do this. And then you're like, oh, actually, it's a lot harder than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've actually covered quite a lot of things there in that question that are in some of the other questions as well. So I'll try not to repeat something that we've just spoken about before. Elma has asked as well quite a similar question to Susan. She says, so we've covered quite a bit of the things that she has put in there, things like mood swings and anxiousness, lack of energy, aches and pains, hot flushes, lack of sleep, dry skin. The list is endless. She says she's had some success with things like increasing her intake of nuts and seeds using something called Mood, which I'm guessing is a natural supplement, reducing coffee.
I've not heard of that one, but I guess it must be some kind of supplement.
Started having a bath before bed and actually noticed a slight improvement, but any advice would be greatly welcome. So things like dry skin and dry skin all over your body when it comes to menopause, or just in general, I guess you would be wanting to make sure that any moisturisers and things that you use are paraben free.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for dry skin when it comes to, would you go for a topical cream, or would you look at other sort of things first of all?
I think it's important to look both inside and out. So I would say that, because the symptoms that Susan's come up, that Elma was saying, was that actually probably linked to low estrogen. So I would look at trying to increase her levels of estrogen, not the synthetic ones, obviously, but trying to increase natural ones. And you can do that by through something like seed cycling. So she's having an increased intake of seeds. Well, seed cycling is something that's really simple to introduce, but actually really, really beneficial. And what you do is, for the first 14 days of your cycle, so from day 1 being your period to day 14, you take certain types of seeds, just a tablespoon of them each. Flax seeds and pumpkin seeds, a tablespoon of those a day. And then for the day 15 to day 28, as a standard menstrual cycle, you take sunflower and sesame seeds, a tablespoon of those each. And the reason that works is because the flax seed and the pumpkin seeds help to increase your estrogen levels naturally, because the first part of your cycle is dominated by your estrogen to help bring on ovulation. The second part of your cycle should be dominated by progesterone, and often what we tend to find is that the progesterone levels have dipped And that causes a lot of issues, and it's the balance between the estrogen and progesterone that are low. But the sunflower and sesame seeds help to boost your progesterone levels. So by taking those seeds, it can help to balance those hormones out and reduce a lot of the symptoms. It's such an easy thing to introduce,
really simple.
and reason, not an expensive thing to do, and very natural. And although I talked about synthetic hormones and not wanting to put those into your body, when you're taking them in from natural sources like foods that are phytoestrogens and help to naturally increase your progesterone levels, your body deals with them in the same way as if the hormone had been produced in your body. So it actually is a good thing, and it helps they actually help to minimise synthetic estrogen in the body. So they are really, really beneficial. So I would look at trying that. Reducing coffee, of course, is a great thing to do. I would always recommend that you try and cut back on coffee. I don't say you don't have to have it completely. Everybody reacts to it differently. Some people can tolerate it more than others, but you often find when you're menopausal that you are not as tolerant to it. So just try and, see how much you can cope with. And the bath before bedtime, I recommend that to a lot of people. I would always say, though, try and put things like magnesium salts in there and maybe some essential oils like lavender to help you sleep, because that can really help you to relax, because magnesium is known as nature's tranquilizer. So it really helps to calm your body, which is what you need before bed.
Yeah, definitely helps me.
Really helps reduce stress.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love having magnesium salts in the bath. It always makes me feel so much better.
Yeah, I love them.
Yeah.
I use loads because I put them in the kids' bath as well. It can really help them
to
calm to school and stuff. So it's really beneficial. When it comes to skin, though, things like essential fats are important. So making sure that you're eating plenty of those. You get those from nuts and seeds. You'll also get them from things like avocado, coconut oil, olive oil, oily fish like wild salmon and fresh tuna and mackerel and things like that. And lots of oils are important when it comes to skin, because what happens is as you go through the menopause, it can affect the production of collagen and skin oils. So making sure that you are getting them through your diet and boosting the levels is important.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time when and this is not just for menopausal women, but in general, when you have symptoms of anything, such as these symptoms that we've been talking about, the first thing that comes to mind for a lot of people is what medication should I take, or which cream or which ointment or which, pill or potion can I buy from the chemist that, can help this. But actually, you're much better off thinking about treating yourself from the inside out, and a lot of the time you can make some really simple dietary changes like the ones that you've mentioned that can have a much more profound effect in just masking the symptoms.
Yeah, and I think that's a cultural thing, isn't it, really, for where we are. We've grown up thinking that we can go to the doctors and just be given a quick fix.
Yeah. And
I think it's about thinking about how you can do things differently. And you know what, we are very lucky to live in the way that we do. There is so many ways that you can be helped by the health service. That's a great thing. And what I do is definitely not an alternative therapy. It's a complementary one that working alongside them. But I think sometimes people rush to the doctors rather than thinking about how they can help themselves first. And sometimes actually you're better off thinking about that. Yeah. And I do think that more doctors, probably the younger ones in particular, are starting to think a little bit more about diet and how that can help more. And hopefully that will come through more in the health service as well.
Oh yeah, I hope so.
More available to people.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. There's a question from Lisa, again quite similar. She's suffering with things like weight gain, aching joints and muscles. I know you've touched on this already. Any advice on how to manage the pain effectively?
Yes, it's a lot of the time it's to do with your estrogen. It affects your joints. Yeah. So I'd try the seed cycling for her as well.
Right, okay.
And also looking at whether she's lacking in minerals. The key ones when it comes to things like aching joints and muscles are calcium. So making sure that you're getting that. a lot when we talk about calcium, people always go straight to dairy. I prefer to try and get it through different things. Things like sardines and fishes that you actually eat the bones of are really good because your body absorbs that better. Also, things like green leafy vegetables are really great for getting calcium. Dairy is a good source. It's an easy source, but your body doesn't necessarily digest and absorb the calcium from it as well as it does from those other sources. I'd also look at magnesium levels, because when your magnesium levels are low, which is much more common than most people realise, your muscles tend to ache. You might get a bit of restless legs at night. So making sure that you are having that. And like I said, magnesium salt bath, or it can be from things like nuts, seeds. Brazil nuts in particular are a really good source of magnesium. Other things like beans and pulses are also good sources of magnesium, so getting more of those in your diet. You could also, if you don't want to have a bath, you could also try a magnesium spray. And I like those sort of topical applications of things, because you don't have to, when you take a tablet, it has to go through your digestive system, be broken down, and you'll absorb some of it before the rest of it kind of comes out. When you put it onto your skin or you soak in it, it goes directly into your bloodstream, so you're getting a much better dose of it.
Yeah, definitely. The topical sprays are great.
Yeah, they are, and they're really, really available now. You can find them in a lot of supermarkets, even, and health food shops, so they're a really easy thing to get. Well, you can in the UK anyway. I don't know whether your listeners are more UK mostly international, but in the UK you can get things like that in the supermarkets and health food shops, and also potassium levels can become quite low, and you can get that very easily in things like sweet potatoes. Coconut water is a good source of potassium for a bit of a quick boost, and also banana is a good source. So trying to increase these kind of foods should help.
Brilliant. There's some I'm learning a lot here. Let's see.
You'll be very well prepared when you get there.
No, it sounds like so much fun. Let's see if we have any other questions that we haven't covered yet. Lindsay was saying that she suffers from terrible restless legs and itchy crawling skin. I think you covered that there by, that something like a topical magnesium spray would be a good magnesium spray, or having a magnesium bath. Again, that's caused by falling estrogen levels. It affects your circulation. Right. So a lot of the time it's your circulation. So make sure that you're moving around and not sat down all the time. So exercise is really good for restless leg syndrome. Drinking plenty of water so you're staying hydrated is also important. And again, like the magnesium is good. But also try something that's worked for my clients in the past, is actually adding some salt to water, and not like table salt, but Himalayan pink salt. Contains all sorts of different trace minerals, and just adding like half a teaspoon to a glass of water and drinking that can relieve it. Because if it is a mineral imbalance, then by adding those minerals in, hopefully it should help to relax it. And also with the itchy crawling skin, that's a really horrible one that comes up a lot. Again, a drop of estrogen, it affects your collagen and your skin oil production, which I said before. In the ways to get that, to improve that through your diet, are things like making sure that you're eating foods that help to boost your collagen. So salmon's a really good one for that, because it's an omega-3. Also contains zinc, which helps to produce collagen. Vitamin A is important for the production of collagen as well, and you get that in things like orange-based foods, so carrots, sweet potatoes, those kind of foods. But also, what's a really good source of liver is vitamin A is liver, if you can separate it. That's something I've never been able to.
People eat that much of nowadays, but it is a really good source.
Okay, that's interesting. So things like liver and organ meats is something that I've actually never eaten, and I'm actually quite embarrassed to say that, but it's just something I've never thought of trying. So
I just have terrible memories of my dad giving me the worst liver and onions dinner when it was the case, that it put me off for a long time. But it was just the way that he just totally overcooked it.
Yeah, I bet.
Something cooked properly, it can taste really nice. And of course, I used to buy it and make my own pate. So you can buy it and make pate. So I bought, some of it from the farm shop before, and I was like, oh, I've bought this now, I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, that's a better way of doing it, I suppose. I think I could tolerate that rather than someone just putting a plate of liver down in front of me.
Yeah, it's quite easy to make, and what I did, I think I just froze some of it because it goes off quite quickly, and even the kids enjoyed that, because they would have had pate before, but I would never get them eating something like liver because the smell of it and stuff puts you off.
Yeah. But
it is really, really good at producing vitamin A, helping your body to produce vitamin A, which is why you're not allowed to have it when you're pregnant, because you don't want to produce excess vitamin A at that point.
Ah, that's dead interesting. I think we've covered a lot there on menopause. I think that's going to be really helpful for my clients and for, the ladies that have sent me some questions there, most of them are my clients. So thank you very much for that.
You're very welcome.
Fantastic. Can we talk about stress for a second?
Of course we
While
can.
we're here, I only have one or two questions from listeners about stress. However, it is something that we could talk about for hours and hours, but it's something that really does affect so many things. I work in the weight loss industry, so I tend to talk about it a lot in regards to weight loss, and I have a lot of personal experience of it, in that I know my own body well enough to know that I am not going to be productive in any way when it comes to fat loss or improving the way that I perform in the gym or anything in that manner if I am stressed. And I don't mean, sometimes I don't necessarily need to feel stressed, but it can be all the different types of stress that are coming from all different angles. So what types of stress are there out there that could be affecting someone that's maybe trying to lose weight, that feels like they're doing everything right but they're not considering their stress levels? There are lots of different types of stress.
Because our body reacts the same whether it's physical, mental or emotional stress. So actually it doesn't matter what type of stress that's going on. So by physical stress, I mean things like putting a lot of strain on your body. It might be a health condition, it might be an injury or something like that. Mental stress tends to be when you're going through a particularly difficult situation, whether it's a divorce, a house move, anything that is causing you a lot of stress emotionally, mentally, that's just making you feel overwhelmed. And then emotional stress tends to be, just feeling really low and upset, overwhelmed in yourself. So there's those three different types of things. All of those affect our bodies, and what they basically do is cause us to produce excess levels of cortisol and adrenaline, which when we produce those, it puts a lot of strain on our body. It affects our hormone production, it affects our immune system, our digestion. It can cause you to feel really tired, headaches, all of those sorts of things. But weight gain is really one of the key ones when it comes to it. And what's actually happening is that your increased cortisol levels slow down your metabolism, and when you have excess levels of cortisol, that actually results in our body storing it as fat, which I think I mentioned before. Also, we get a lot of food cravings when you're stressed. So often people find when they're stressed that they emotionally eat. Or you just get a bit of sodic attitude, I call it.
Yep.
So you just think, I just can't be arsed. I'm not bothered now. It's just all pointless. I'm just going to eat what I want. I can't bother to go to the gym. You just don't take care of yourself. And that's just so common, isn't it? I'm sure you see that all the time. But the food cravings brought on by chronic stress means that we overeat, and usually when you crave food, it's the wrong types of foods. Things like sugar and crisps and cakes and all of those kind of things, and junk food, which are not really giving your body any nutrients. They're not giving you what you need to function well. They're just giving you fuel, basically. And I always compare, with my clients, a lot of the time I compare our bodies to a car, in the same way that if you don't put the right fuel in it, and give it the right amount of fuel, it's not going to work in the same way. So it's not just about the amount of food you're eating, it's also about the quality of the foods that you're eating when it comes to stress, making sure that you are eating the right things. If you're eating lots of carbohydrate-based foods, then your body will most likely store it as fat because it's trying to keep itself safe.
Yep.
Basically, exactly. That's what the stress response is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, definitely. And what sort of things would you suggest to help, everyday things that people could perhaps sort of do, simple stuff to sort of reduce the impact of stress? Because a lot of the time we can't always manage the actual stressors themselves, but we can manage the way that we react to the stress. Well,
yeah, that's a really important point, actually.
Does that, we can't manage, sometimes we can't always manage the actual cause of the stress, but if we manage the way that we react to it, does that have the same hormonal benefits as actually removing the stress? Or
yes, it does. I really believe it does, and I think it's really important to think about how you manage stress rather than just reacting to it. And things that I would get my clients to do are things like making sure that they actually take some time out during the day. It could be 5 minutes, it could be half an hour, and just do something that makes you happy. And that could be, for some people that's reading a book, or going for a walk in nature, having a bit of a dance around the kitchen, whatever it is that works for you. Yeah. That's what's important.
Yeah.
Also thinking about, I think we've talked about before the sort of technological stress. We put a lot of stress on ourselves through social media. So I like to try and cut back on the amount of time you spend scrolling through that news feed and seeing how perfect everybody else's life is, and what everybody else is doing, what you think you should be doing. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
I also think, doing things like meditating can be really helpful. A lot of people feel a bit like adverse to doing that, but even just spending 5-10 minutes just breathing quietly and nothing else can really help to bring the stress levels down. There's a really good app actually which I downloaded recently called Headspace. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yeah, I was just actually going to suggest that. There's a couple that I use, and when you mentioned the fact that a lot of people are kind of a bit adverse to that used to be me. I was like, meditating? Nah, I don't need that. But a few years ago, I downloaded this Headspace, but I also downloaded another one called Calm. I don't know if you've used that one.
Yeah, I have heard of that. I've actually got that book, I think.
Yeah, they do have a book, yeah. And I've used both of them, and honestly, it's just 5-10 minutes a day. I can't believe the difference it makes.
It does, and especially if you can start your day off that way. I think the way you start your day off is important. Having a little bit of a routine can really help. I think when you kind of fly from one thing to the other and you never know what's happening, that can also put additional stress on you. I like to try, and I'm not saying you have to live your life, at 5:05 I go to bed, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It needs to be fitting in with your life, but getting up, maybe spending 5 minutes doing meditation or some exercise of some kind, because that can really help to relieve stress. Sitting down and having your breakfast instead of gulping it down while you're sorting the kids out, that kind of thing. And also thinking about when you go to sleep, because your cortisol regulates itself at night. So when you need to be asleep by sort of 11 o'clock at night to get the best quality sleep. And to make sure that your cortisol levels are regulated, because they regulate at midnight. So if you're not asleep at that time, you're going to bed at different times every night. You're getting your circadian rhythm out of sync. That can really affect the levels of stress in your body and how your body actually reacts to stress.
Yeah. Definitely, the sleep thing for me is one thing that really changed my stress levels. I believe I was one of those people who was, up till 1-2 in the morning, working or doing something silly.
You can do that and get away, and you probably do get away with it for a certain amount of time, but then it kind of catches up on you.
Oh, it does. Yeah, it really does, especially if it's for a prolonged period of time. it has so many effects on your day-to-day life that you don't even realise, that just by simply switching your sleep routine, a couple of hours forward, going to bed a couple of hours earlier eventually, and then getting up a couple of hours earlier can just make all the difference to something as simple as your stress levels, which can have an effect on your body weight as well.
Yeah. And I also I actually wrote a blog post on it called Bedtime Routines and Not Just for Babies. And it was all about, how actually it's really important to make sure that you have some level of bedtime routine to prepare your body and to let your body know that it's time to go to sleep. That can really help to improve how well you sleep.
I will link to that blog post in the podcast notes as well, so that people can read that too. Because I do think I totally agree with you there. When it comes to sleep, I know now, like, I need to get 8 hours of sleep a night. Anything less than that, and you do not want to be within a 10-mile radius.
I'm the same. I need my sleep.
Completely. So I have one question from Emma in regards to stress. She says, I have a burning stress hormones question. How long before your stress hormones come back to normal level once you've removed the cause of the stress?
Okay, so this is a how long is a piece of string kind of question.
That's what I thought.
Generally not that long for the hormone levels obviously your body isn't going to be producing the hormones in the same levels, but it's the damage that's happened to them in the meantime that you need to work on. So it isn't just a case of removing the stress and that's it. You have to look at what damage has been caused. And by damage, I mean, like, the fact that certain nutrient levels will be low because when you're stressed, they use up a lot of those, or your body's not producing them or absorbing things as well. And basically what you need to do is rebalance them. What happens with cortisol is that it should be produced at different levels throughout the day. So in the morning when you wake up, you should get a big burst of cortisol to help you get up and get on with your day. And then at certain other points during the day, you'll get another burst to help keep your energy levels high. And then at night time, it should start to decline and should be low, ready to prepare yourself to go to bed. And what often happens with people that are stressed is that that's out of sync. So you might be quite low in the morning, and that's why you're struggling to get out of bed and you feel really, really tired. And at night, you feel a bit tired but wired. So you want to go to sleep, but you can't. So I tend to find that people, that's basically stress cortisol levels have got out of sync. So getting those back into sync is really, really important. One of the things is making sure that your circadian rhythm is right. So that bedtime routine is really, really important for that. Again, like I said, cortisol regulates itself at midnight. That's even more important if it's been dysregulated. But also the nutrient absorption. Vitamin C is a really important vitamin for stress. We talk about it a lot in immunity, but it's really important for stress because it's actually produced it's actually stored in the adrenal glands, which is what produces our stress hormones. So we use up a hell of a lot of it when we're stressed. So you need to make sure that you are boosting those levels. And, good sources of that, we talk a lot about citrus fruit, but that's not actually the best source. It has some. Things like peppers, broccoli, cherries, leafy greens all contain good levels of vitamin C.
That's interesting. That's not the ones. That's not the go-to ones that come to mind when you think of vitamin C. Isn't
lemon
it?
as well is a good one. But those are the ones that have the higher levels. Because people go straight for the citrus fruits.
That's right.
Because that's what we talk about. Take some orange juice. Don't do that because it's got loads of sugar in it.
That's right.
But also B vitamins as well help support our bodies. Support basically our bodies with the energy that it needs after stress. So we need to make sure that we're getting lots of B vitamins when we've been stressed. And things like bananas, leafy greens, again, that's what I'm going to talk about all the time. It's great for liver health. It's got B vitamins, it's got vitamin C, it's got magnesium. Have green leafy vegetables every day, and that's things like broccoli, cabbage, kale, spinach. Those kind of things in your diet are really important. Nuts and seeds, meat, fish are also really good sources of B vitamins that your body will absorb well. And again, I'm going to talk about magnesium. That's depleted really easily when you're stressed. And like I said, it is nature's tranquilizer. It really helps to relax us, and it's essential for hormone production and making sure that we are producing hormones in the right quantities. So things like nuts, beans, lentils, whole grains are all really important. So it's about, supporting your body after that period of stress, really, I think.
Yeah.
To help boost the levels back up.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily the stress is gone, that's it, everything's fine.
No, unfortunately
it's okay,
not.
The stress.
But it is very important to remove that stress.
Yeah.
If it's having such a massive effect. But it's about what you do afterwards.
Yeah.
To help support your body in rebuilding.
Yeah, I suppose it's a bit if we sort of think about a physical problem that we have. Maybe you've got you've broken your ankle, for example. You wouldn't just leave it. You wouldn't just say, well, it's broken, I'll just leave it to fix itself now. You've got to, it's a similar thing. On the other hand, you've got to make sure that you actually aid the recovery process from that, and that's not just for physical things, but for psychological things like stress as well.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. Just be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Everybody just we have this attitude that we just kind of get on with it, and actually that's not beneficial to just get on with things. You do need to take care of yourself, be kind to yourself. Treat us. I think I said this a while ago, and it really resonated with quite a lot of people. Treat yourself as well as you would treat your children. You feed them well, you make sure they move their bodies, you make sure they sleep well, and they're getting the nutrients in the body that they need to grow. But you don't necessarily treat yourself with the same respect.
Yeah, that's a big thing. A big thing. I think a lot of women, and I talk about this a lot within my groups, a lot of women particularly feel that, I think you hit the nail on the head there a few moments ago when you said we just need to get on with it. And that's the kind of mentality that a lot of women have. Oh, I've got this, I don't feel good here, but I just need to get on with it for the benefit of everyone else.
Yeah.
And that if that goes on for a long period of time, years and years, decades and decades, and you look back and you think, oh, God, when was the last time I actually took 5 minutes to sit down and look after myself?
Yeah, and you can't look after yourself, after other people as well, or be as committed to your job and your family if you're not looking after yourself properly. So it is actually important for them that you do it as much as it is for you. And I think there's just so much pressure on people nowadays. This kind of image of a perfect woman is all over the place, and it's made worse by, like I said, the social media thing, which is why I think it's so important to step away from that.
And these things can cause psychological stress that you don't even realise is happening on a daily basis. When you're scrolling through these things on Facebook and you're having all these thoughts going through your head, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough all the time. And these sort of things can have a profound effect on what's going on inside, and we don't even realise that it's happening.
But people share the best bits of themselves on social media. They don't share the crap. They don't share the everyday life. They don't share what's actually going on.
No, exactly.
You only see the best pictures. You only see the best bits of their life,
Yeah.
And a lot of it isn't real. And I think that's really important to remember when it comes to those kind of psychological stressors, that it's it's a snapshot.
Yeah, I think more of us need to start airing our dirty laundry. Here's the shit bits, guys. No. On that note, I just wanted to say thank you so much for everything today and for answering all these questions, because I know it's there's a lot of different things going on there. So first of all, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it a lot. And secondly, I know for a fact that lots of people listening to this, including the women that so kindly sent in their questions, will be wanting to find out more about what you do and how how perhaps you can help them, because it's definitely not, these things are definitely not something that I can delve deep into. And if anyone does want to get in touch with you, maybe to have a chat about how you can help them, what's the best way that they can get in touch with you?
So if you go to my website, which is www.rebeccaboulton.com, and I offer a free Heal Your Hormones call for people that are thinking about working with me. So it gives us a chance to have a chat through exactly what's going on for you. I mean, a lot of the things we've talked about and I've said today, it's about how personalised it is. So it's about finding out what's going on for you specifically and what might be the best way for us to work together and whether it is appropriate. So on my website, you've got possibility to book a call. And I've also, I do weekly video blogs. I also do lots of blogs on there, and there's lots of information on there that you can find out more about hormonal health. I'm also very active on my Facebook page, which is Rebecca Boulton at the Hormone Mentor. And I'm on LinkedIn under Rebecca Boulton, the Hormone Mentor as well. Those are the places that I tend to hang out the most. So come along and say hi.
Great. I will make sure that the links are in there, so that if you're listening to the podcast on iTunes or Stitcher at the moment, the link should actually be, if you've got the new iOS, the link should be in front of your face right now, that you can actually just click on it, which is awesome. In the new update of the podcast app, you can actually see the notes now in front of you. You don't need to go hunting for them.
Oh, that's great. I must update mine.
Yeah, it's really good now that you don't need to, I don't even know how you got the podcast notes before. Now they're like, when you're listening to the podcast, they're right in front of you, so it's really good. So all your links will be on there. So thanks again, Rebecca.
My pleasure. I've enjoyed talking to you.
So again, a massive thank you to Rebecca for that incredible interview. I hope that you have enjoyed listening. And for those of you that sent in a question, I hope that you got the answers that you were looking for. If you enjoyed the podcast, as always, please leave me a review on iTunes or Stitcher, wherever you listen to this podcast. And I guess this is my opportunity as well to wish you guys a very Merry Christmas, because this is the last episode of the podcast before Christmas. So have a great one, whatever you're up to. Stay healthy, stay happy, don't eat too much chocolate, and have a brilliant time. I will see you after Christmas. Take care.